Hello everyone, True Songbird here again with video number 1. Wow, I gotta practice writing neat with this thing. Either way, on today's first video, as I said on my first introduction video, we will be starting with the dead basics of music, like as simple as you can get. So number 1 will be this. Here's the questions you should be able to answer by the end of this video. What is a staff? That's the main question you should be able to answer by the time this video is over. And a side note question, what needs to be on a staff to make it valid? Okay, so by the end of the video, make sure you can answer both of these questions because you need to know these things very well. Every piece of music you will see will have these, so listen closely. So first off, a staff looks like this. I'm gonna draw one for you. Okay, so this is your basic staff. What a staff is, it's basically just 5 lines in which the music is written on. So remember that's the definition of a staff. 5 lines in which music is written on. So, here, what needs to be on a staff to make it valid? Because this is not a valid staff. It's missing quite a few things. First, it needs to have measures. And they need to be labeled. Either with numbers or letters sometimes. In easier music, they'll be labeled with letters. They'll look like this. That's a measure, and that's a measure. But since the first one is usually used for other stuff, I'm not going to use it. So measure 1 will start right here. This will be 2, and so on. Please note that in music, not every measure is labeled. Just certain ones are, where the music usually changes, or a new instrument comes in. This way, the band director can reference this point much easier. Okay, what else needs to be on a staff? A clef. Every instrument has their own clef. Well, not their own clef, but there's a few different ones. I'll be going over the different clefs in a different video, but for now I'm just going to draw the one that my instrument uses. This is called a treble clef. My instrument uses this one. I play the clarinet, by the way. Instruments that have higher pitched sounds will usually use this clef. And like I said, I'll go over the other ones in another video, because I think just going over everything else that goes on here will take long enough. So that will be a separate video. What else needs to be on a staff to make it valid? We have our measures and a clef. Well, how are we counting these measures? That's where the time signature comes in. A time signature tells you what type of notes have one beat in it and how many there are. For example, 4/4 time is the common one. It's also written as C a lot of the time, for common. If you see C there, that means it's on common time, 4/4. And I'll explain that again in another video, as this is very complicated to understand. This will be the hardest thing you will have to learn as a musician, but I'm sure I could help you get the hang of it. So for now, let's just say that's what it is, 4/4, or C. And third, you need a key signature. A key signature tells you what notes you should be playing flat and which ones you should be playing sharp, because the writer of the music doesn't have time to mark every note himself. So he puts it in that first beginning measure, measure 0, so to speak, and then you have to label the rest yourself. My instrument is in the key of B flat, which means that all B's and E's are flat. So E, G, B, oops, I did that backwards, and E is right here. So this is what my key would look like if it were from my instrument. This means that every good boy, yes, I'm going to teach you how to read a staff in a second for this clef, and we'll go over the other kinds in the other video for clefs. So for me, this would be a G. No, sorry, this would be a B. Meaning every single B in this song, unless marked with this symbol right here, is going to be flat. It also means that since this one here is an E for me, so every E in this song, unless marked with this symbol, is going to be flat. So let's look at some other symbols you might see on a staff. You could see this next to a note. that means you need to play the note flat, but it's not part of your key signature. And on the opposite note, this means you need to play them sharp, but it's not in the key signature. Also, if there are notes that are not marked, but you should be playing them sharp or flat in the key signature, the musician will sometimes want you to ignore that, in which he'll write this. This is a natural symbol. It means ignore the key signature and play the note in its normal way. Those are symbols you'll see next to notes. So now let's talk about the different kinds of notes that you could see on a staff. I'm going to talk about the most common ones. Of course, there's other kinds. There's a 16th note. I hope you know your fractions. You should by now. An 8th note. A quarter note. A half note. And a whole note. So, like I said, we're going to pretend that our measures are 4/4 for now, or common time. 90% of the songs I've played in 14 years have been in 4/4, common time. So, I don't think you're going to have to learn much of the other times, but I'm going to teach you anyway in the next video. So, in a 4/4 measure, here's what 16th notes would look like. I should be an artist. I'm a great artist, aren't I? My art can move people. Alright, so this is what 16th notes would look like in one measure, in 4/4. The way you would count this is 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a. I know, it's kind of fun to say, and I wouldn't recommend practicing that in front of your friends, because you'll sound really ridiculous. But, yeah, that's how you would do it. So now 8th notes. If you know your fractions well, you know that an 8th is half of a 16th. So, there's half as many notes. You'd be surprised how much math comes up in band class, I'm telling you. I was really surprised, at least. Okay, so in one measure, this is what 8th notes would look like if it were the whole measure. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Realize I said half the amount of notes is 16th notes. That's because an 8th is half of a 16th. Now on to quarter notes. Once again, there's half the amount, because a quarter is half of an 8th. This one's really hard to count, so listen carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know. Don't be overwhelmed. Just kidding. That's pretty easy, I hope. Now, a half note. Now please note carefully that I know they show up black, these ones here, on the music paper, but since I can only draw in green, assume that the ones I colored in are black on the paper, and the ones that I leave blank are going to be not colored in on your paper. So anyway, these are half notes. Each one takes up 2 beats, so it sounds like this. 1, 3. Why didn't I say 2? Because beats 1 and 2 are in the first note. So and since it's one note, they're not separated. So you don't hear 2 and you don't hear 4. Because 2 is part of 1 and 4 is part of 3. Now a whole note. Ooh, that was hard to draw. A whole note is a whole measure by itself in 4/4. The way you would count it? 1. You hold 1 for 4 beats long. Don't worry if you don't get all this right away. You'll get it once you try playing a few songs. Now, for every kind of note there's a kind of rest for it that you'll see on your measures. Because you're not playing the whole time, are you? At least I hope you're not. No one wants to hear you that much. Just kidding. You should play as much as possible. But in reality, every song is not going to have you playing the entire time. I've never had a song like that. So, in those places, there are rests. Rests are like notes, except you don't play them. You stay silent on them and rest. So now I'm going to show you in a 4/4 bar what a rest would look like. The 16th note rest is kind of hard to draw. It looks kind of like a question mark, I guess. It's kind of hard to show. Just look it up. It'll probably get a better picture of it. But there's two of them because each one is an eighth rest. An eighth rest is just one of those things. Again, look it up for a better picture. A quarter note rest looks kind of like a lightning bolt colored in. I know, I'm a great artist. That's a quarter note rest. A half note rest is actually on the line, and it looks like Mr. Monopoly's hat. Like that. And then a whole note rest looks like his hat fell off, because it's the same thing, but upside down. Now, again, it's on the line, so don't expect to see a little hat floating around. This is the line right here, what this represents, okay? This is your line of music, and that's what the rest would look like. Okay. Let me show you. Here's some other things you'll see on a staff. As far as volume, here's the basic ones. Of course, there's some in between. There would be piano, mezzo piano, and forte. There's plenty of them in between, and I'm not going to go over all of them. I'll do that in another video. But here's what you need to know. Piano basically means to shut up a little bit because they want you to play quiet. Mezzo piano just means play at a normal volume. Don't whisper, don't yell. Talking voice. Forte, even though it's not the loudest one, because there's still some more markings out here, and even here, this doesn't mean blast it, but it means play louder than you normally do. Just in case you're curious, and if you're a new musician, because I know you are, who isn't, the loudest one you can get is fortissimo, which is resembled by two Fs. Don't tell your parents you failed twice. Just kidding. Another thing you may see is the composer might want you to get quieter as you're playing music. That would look like this, which means this is called a decrescendo. You'll start louder, and then you're gonna get very softer as you keep playing the notes that get there. Then, of course, you may see the opposite. They may want you to start really quietly, and then they want you to get louder as you get past it. Pretty simple, I think. Yes. Then, there's another thing called this. You may see that. No, don't be one of those idiot kids that thinks it stands for retard, because it doesn't. It stands for retardando. See what I did there? Retardando. Yeah, I did spell it right. Okay. Retardando means as you're playing, you're going to slow down dramatically. And then once you pass it, you're going to go back to normal speed. So it doesn't really matter. But don't ignore those, okay? They're important. They're freaking important, okay? And next thing is this. That is called a fermata. It basically means hold the note until your teacher says so. Basically, it means your teacher is the boss of you and you have to deal with that. So too bad. Deal with it. Doesn't matter. Sorry for the interruption. I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so I believe those are the basics of what you'll see. I know it's a lot to take in, and you might want to watch this video a few more times to get the hang of everything you'll see on it. Or if you just forget what something is, do it. There's also a lot of accents and stuff over notes I can get into, but again, I don't like my videos being too long, so I'll get over those in another video when I go over dynamics and stuff like that, intonations. That was the wrong word. I meant articulation. Sorry, my bad. Until next time, True Songbird out.